subscribers with a little something I wrote about free speech and Dr. Seuss in May last year. I'm new to posting on social media, but like most of you, I've enjoyed watching numerous broadcasts on social media, especially the political broadcasts over the years. During 2 decades in international politics, primarily overseas, not only being sent to analytics and intelligence courses, but with a master's in this field, I was astonished to realize that a majority of people in my own field mainly cut and paste from previously existing news feeds. So in any broadcast I upload, it will be paramount for me to show the primary source material, provide you with links and how to download it, show you where and how to find it, and provide you with information about how you can use it. For today, however, I'm going to share a little something that I wrote last year, and I'd like to thank Anne for my first comment on my blog. Thanks to her, it's something I realized that I'd like to share within the context of this year. As a child of the 1980s, a generation raised by a combination of 60s hippies and Vietnam vets, our teachers and parents taught us that democracy, above all else, meant free speech. It meant that no matter what you thought of someone else's words, they had a right to say them because it's a free country, the most free in the entire world. On more than one occasion, I recall coming home from school and reporting a bad word another kid had called me to my sympathetic parents, only to be told a little rhyme. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. My parents could have called the school or demanded a safe space for me, as is now the trend. Instead, the values of standing up for yourself, using your words and not your fists, and allowing others to hold differing opinions held more weight than my hurt feelings. Of course, words are powerful. They may cause discomfort, but the message is clear. Words will not kill you, and everyone has the right to say them. Fight words with words, not sticks and stones. After all, we were the free to be you and me kids, the children of true and hard-won democracy, the grandchildren of the World War II generation, the Great Generation. To allow censorship of any kind was to be like the fascists we had defeated, to be anti-democratic. In 2021, censorship is increasingly accepted by the mainstream and defended as rational. It's also increasingly explained away. Only some of the books are censored, not all of the books. Or the items that we are censoring are dangerous and safety is important, more important than free speech. Or I wouldn't read that book anyway, so who cares if it's censored? In March this year, amidst cancellation of Dr. Seuss and other prolific writers, I had some odd conversations, and they all concluded the same way, with 3 new buzzwords. I am offended. It occurred to me that the offense, which I had caused with evidence-backed words, simultaneously halted all debate and pitted me as the villain. You're not allowed to say that. You're not a good person if you say that. Dr. Seuss, Theodore Seuss Geisel, emphasized the importance of every person's voice, no matter how small, from Horton Hears a Who in 1954. He taught children life lessons through his magical stories, lessons like not judging others by what's on the outside, but by what's on the inside in the Sneetches. Talked about the caring for the environment in the Lorax in the 70s, the uniqueness of each individual in Did I Ever Tell You How Lucky You Are and The Shape of Me in the 70s. He was Jewish and fought fascism through political cartoons. He won an Academy Award for his documentary films in World War II. 6 Dr. Seuss books will no longer be printed, already having been removed from schools and libraries. Disney is reportedly scrapping the Dr. Seuss-themed area of its parks. Our nation's leadership has called Dr. Seuss books racist. Late-night talk show hosts, paid lobbyists, released statements like, Dr. Seuss is not canceled, it's just time to retire books with racist imagery. Only 5 years earlier, our country's first Black president spoke about the positive impact Dr. Seuss books had on him as a child. The censorship of Dr. Seuss is couched in the argument that certain images, language in his books are racist, derogatory, or at least old-fashioned enough to cause irreparable harm to our nation's youth. Does censorship prevent bigotry or improve public safety? This rationale for banning books isn't new. The same rationale, causing irreparable harm to the nation's youth, was used by the infamous National Socialists in Germany to censor and burn books back in the 30s and 40s. Watching some of my favorite writers being removed from print this year, or in some cases rewritten, abridged, not only Dr. Seuss, but Mark Twain, Laura Ingalls Wilder, Little House on the Prairie, John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath, Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird, Yuri Bezmenov, Love Letter to America, among many others. Even Republican Theodore Roosevelt, who created our national parks and modern conservationism. I'm concerned. Why are such thought-provoking writers being censored or retired, as some on late night refer to their support of censorship? Moreover, why are they specifically censored? Well, prominent Middle Eastern leadership, unabashed and outspoken Jewish Holocaust deniers, remain uncensored on major platforms, for example. Then I recalled a little tidbit from my own youth. My favorite high school teacher asked us to make a poster that makes you think in the form of propaganda. This was in 1994, and we were studying World War II, the issues of propaganda, censorship, and Joseph McCarthy, the man who went after Hollywood elite for communism. I went into the assignment with vigor, creating a poster with pictures of different types of people. I wrote the well-known derogatory word for each ethnic group under each picture, with the pictures and words crossed through with a large no symbol in red. And at the bottom of the poster, I pasted a mirror and the word you and a big no symbol over the mirror. It was an anti-racism poster in the form of propaganda, and my teacher loved it. She hung it on a window of her classroom facing the outside commons area, but only a few hours later that same day, my teacher called me to her. "I have to take it down," she said quietly. Our school's leadership had seen it and called it shocking and uncomfortable. My poster causes discomfort, she was told. I thought that was the point of art. The assignment was to make people think. She felt terrible, and I could tell by her face that this lesson was the opposite of her intended anti-censorship lesson plan. My teacher was, and still is, a staunch liberal. Before the word lost all relation to the original values of liberalism, I once called myself that too. "To censor your poster is contrary to everything I teach you," I recall her saying as she carefully peeled the tape from the edges to remove it from the glass and take it down. Cancel culture and woke may be the current buzzwords, but back in the 90s, in my high school days, we called it being PC. Political correctness meant being good. Therefore, anyone who did not act politically correct and who knows better is not a good person. What is good? It was good to avoid hurting people's feelings. It was therefore good to avoid using certain words that may cause such hurt feelings. This made sense. Why unnecessarily hurt anyone's feelings if it could be helped? That was when the war on words began. It never was intended as censorship or restriction of words through government or other means of authoritative control. I believe that the initial intent was innocent, to be better, more humane Americans. Thinking back on that moment, the day my pro-First Amendment teacher had to take my artwork down, I now realize that much of today's cancel culture all started way back then. Perhaps it's our own fault that things were taken too far and so spun out of context, so misused for agendas that we knew nothing about. That the honorable values of what it once meant to be liberal have been turned and modified into a very undemocratic paradigm shift for our country, where any view outside a singular narrative is unacceptable and worthy of censorship. The progressives of today have little to nothing in common with 90s liberalism. I didn't know it at the time, but the late 90s was the beginning of a slippery slope, the making of an increasingly authoritarian culture, and we are sliding faster and farther down the mountain of unintended consequences, including growing limitations on our right to express our thoughts, when we initially only intended to be good. So what about Dr. Seuss and the irreparable harm he's causing with outdated imagery and lingo? Is Dr. Seuss hurting people's feelings? Is he offensive? Even if he is offensive, who gets to decide what is and is not offensive? What should and should not be removed from bookshelves? The be sensitive rule, however, didn't apply to debate and political discourse in the 90s. The new ideas of being PC were only beginning to take root back then. We said what we thought, and teachers proudly cheered us on. We 80s kids had parents who stood up against the powerful elites of their own era for issues that are simply taken for granted today, issues like civil rights and equal protection laws, fighting for these issues with words, debate and discourse, and peaceful assembly. In other words, using their constitutional rights. They won. Despite the victory, the mainstream media, news, commercials, late-night TV shows on mainstream channels, and every major corporation all carry the same messages. America must start over and change everything. Because it's a racist and terrible country, and we therefore need censorship to fix things. Just a side note, does any current liberal or Democrat find it strange that the same corporations we fought against in the 90s are now mysteriously on their side? The argument that a nation must start over due to a bad past was the same argument used in the people's revolutions in many different countries. Ask any Cuban, Venezuelan, or Guatemalan person who fled to the United States for freedom. I was a child during the Tiananmen Square massacre in China in 1989, a tragedy that today's politicians refuse to call a massacre anymore due to the political ramifications. Can you imagine? They can't say the word massacre anymore and worry about offending dictators. China's people lost their freedom in the name of reinventing a new society, rewriting history, and claiming everything outside the party's narrative must be censored in the name of public safety. The party called anything that contradicted its narrative offensive. Then it made it illegal, eventually punishable by death. They destroyed beautiful ancient statues of Buddha and Confucius throughout Asia. They demolished the fragile artwork, intricate architecture, and the entire culture of Tibet, all in the name of the people. The Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in the 90s, still lives in exile and can't return home to Tibet. Censorship may be misconstrued as a minor issue. There are many more important issues, some might say. Our children, our health, our environment, our economy, our security, all outweigh such a tiny little problem like taking a few writers off a few bookshelves. But in the 90s, censorship was already well recognized as the root cause of fascism. Censoring Dr. Seuss impacts more than merely a few Dr. Seuss fans. The future of our democracy rests in our ability to teach our children to value and listen to divergent opinions, including opinions they don't like. To teach them, as we were taught, that censorship is wrong, undemocratic, and un-American. In the face of an overly sensitive era, one where we are all too easily offended, if we're not careful about what liberties we give up in exchange for what we are promised in return, we risk losing our democracy and freedom our country has fought for and defended since its independence from the British monarchy in 1776. We fought against a crown and government overreach in order to live freely and speak freely without authoritarian intervention or subjugation. In my own experience, particularly living overseas and working in conflict countries in Africa and elsewhere for over 2 decades, I learned that censorship, as well as failing to teach the historical context within which something was written, only creates fear, hatred, and resentment. I wrote my master's thesis at Cornell in 2001 about the perpetuation of such divisions in Africa through the censorship of words and ideas. Are American kids still being taught the value of each voice? Are they still taught to hear people who think differently than they do, even when they disagree, even if it makes them angry? Are they still told the little rhyme? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Censorship is antithetical to what liberalism once meant. Censorship is anti-science, another misused buzzword of our times, because it goes against everything we know about political science and the roots of authoritarianism and fascism. Censoring books, words, speech, ideas is anti-democratic, anti-liberal, anti-conservative, and most importantly, anti-American. Let's remind today's youth about how we solved grievances when we were young, not with censorship or cancel culture, not by silencing our opponents or critics, but rather with discourse, with debate, with well-researched and articulate points backed by evidence, with peaceful protest. Most importantly, with words, not sticks.
I'm a new channel, and if you'd like to see more videos, it'd be terrific if you click like or subscribe, or let me know in the comment section below about any pending legislation in your state you'd like to have analyzed. Thank you for watching.